So welcome back. Now, what I want to tell you here is that very important concept of stock market is basically support and the resistance. Where a stock is getting a resistance and where a stock is getting support, that you should be able to identify. And there are various ways by which you can find out the supports and the resistances. So some of them are, the pivot points or the pivot levels. Then you have Gann levels. Then you have Fibonacci levels. Then you have moving averages, they behave as a support and the resistance, and then you have the previous price support and rejection. So we're going to be going through each of them elaborately and understand about them, right? To begin with, the first one is the pivot point and how do we calculate them, right? They definitely offer a good support and resistance. Whether you trade intraday or you trade in positional stocks, these will definitely uh, these will definitely offer a support, or the resistance, right? So be assured, when you know the levels, you will be able to find correct entry and exit, right? So I'm going to take you to a website, or you can just Google it and you will be able to find out how do you calculate the pivot points. So let me take you here. What you need to do on the Google's browser, you just write, R1, R2, R3, and write S1, S2, S3, right? Just click it like that only. Even this should be sufficing. If you haven't got anything, then let me write R1, R2, R3. Sorry, I haven't written it correctly. R2, R3, and S1, S2, S3, right? You need to find these. You get at the top using pivot points in Forex trading by Investopedia. Just click on this, right? Just click on this and you will be able to understand, read through about the pivot points. So I have made a slide, I have made slides for you. I will show you the, pivot points with my own slides. So let me start from here. So how to trade using pivot points, right? So we're going to go one by one each step. What are pivot points? First and foremost, what are pivot points? A pivot point is a technical analysis indicator used to determine the overall trend of the market over different time frames, right? You can find out pivot points in 5 minutes, 1 minute, 3 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, any time frame that you want, even in the daily, weekly, or monthly graphs. The pivot point itself is simply the average of the high, low, and closing prices from the previous trading day. And on the subsequent day, trading above the pivot points is thought to indicate ongoing bullish sentiment, while trading below the pivot point indicates bearish sentiment. Let's go to the next. How do we really calculate pivot points? So the pivot point, the main pivot point is basically high plus low plus close, right? So the main line that you see, so there are, let me just tell you how many lines do exist. So there is one line here, which is called the pivot point. I'm going to write that as PP. Then you have one level above, then another one, then another one. This is called R1, this is called R2, and this is called R3, right? Similarly, you get in the downside 3 levels. These are called S1, S2, and S3, right? So there are in all how many levels? There are in all 7 levels, right? You have only 7 levels to trade with. Okay, so that makes it very easy, right? Let's go on further and read what does it say. How do you calculate R1? R1 is basically double the pivot point minus low of the previous period. Then support is equal to double the previous pivot point minus high of the previous period. Resistance 2 is pivot point minus support, whatever you calculate here, plus the resist R1. Support 2 is pivot point minus resistance minus support 1. R3 is pivot point minus R2 plus resistance 2. And support 3 is pivot point minus R2 minus S2. Now see, Zerodha has, wherever you trade, whether you trade in TradingView or you trade in Zerodha or you trade in Investopedia or you look your graph into Upstocks, whichever trading platform you're using, you will get these automatically calculated. So you don't need to worry about it. But what I'm trying to tell you here is that the pivot point has a correlation with the previous day. What happened a day before? That shows you interconnection of these data, right? And hence it becomes a very, very important, these 7 levels become very, very important levels. So 5 reasons why the traders love to trade with pivot point. First and foremost, they are unique for a given day, right? The pivot points formula takes data from the previous day, but this is unique for a given day. Like today, if I'm trading, the 7 levels that I'm going to get will be absolutely unique levels. And short time frame. Since the pivot point data you can calculate for any duration. For the long term trading, you can find out for one day, and if it is the short term trading that you are doing, you can take the time frame as 5 minutes or 15 minutes. Then accuracy is very, very high. Why? Because it depends upon the previous day's data. The data has already happened, right? So that is why accuracy is very, very high. The fourth point is it is a rich set of data, right? So you get basically 7 levels, and it gives you ease of use. So I mean, if somebody tells you if the market starts going up, these are the 4. Like from the pivot point, there are only 4 above levels, and there are 3 above levels, and from pivot point there are 3 down levels. So when you see such clear, well-defined levels, it makes you trade easily in the pivot points, right? So how to trade using pivot points? So pivot points are significant levels chartist can use to determine directional movement and potential support and the resistance level, right? So let's go to the next. Okay, so this is our website and everything. So let me take you to graph and see what's happening, how are pivot points honored, right? What I'll do, I'm going to remove all the joins from here so that we have clarity. Let me take any stock for that matter. I don't really care. I'm going to put the 1-day graph, and I'll show you how the pivot points have been honored. So go to the Zerodha's studies, and from studies you will take the pivot point right here, and done. Now see here, see very, very clearly market went up, took a resistance from the, this is C. Now before I go on, I want to show you, let me just remove all the rest of stuff from here. Now see, you can see from here there are how many levels each day. There are each this is a daily graph, right? This is a daily graph, so you will get from the previous month. So you have a pivot point, you have R1, you have R2, and you have somewhere way above R3, right? These are the levels in the upward direction. This is Oberoi reality. It's some stock, right? I'm not saying specifically for this stock. Similarly, you have S2, you have S1, then you have S2, then you have way below S3, right? These are the levels. If you want to see this with respect to Nifty, come to Nifty. I'm taking the May future, and what you can do is make the time frame as 15 minutes. So you get the unique levels for intraday trading. Now see here, this is the pivot point. Nifty crossed its first resistance R1, right, with volumes, took a support, went up, again crossed it with volume and took a support and went up, right? And now it closed just below R3, right? Similarly, so what is happening? Let's analyze this. Nifty opened below the pivot point, right? But the first candle itself was a Marubozu candle, voluminous candle, and it closed above the pivot point, means the stance of Nifty is positive, right? And then wait for Nifty's morning range to break. It broke at R2, R1, and it broke with volume. Then it took a support and it went up, up and up, right? It's been just going up and up and up. All right. Now let's take stocks. I love to trade in stocks using the pivot point. So look at one day. This is Apollo Tyres. I've noticed Apollo Tyres many a time. It went up, took a resistance from R1 and it came down. This is a monthly support and the resistance levels, which I put on the daily graph, right? So these are the monthly supports and the resistances. So the stock took a support from S1, went up, experienced a resistance from R1, came down, right? Now entire month it was hovering on the pivot point. Then it crossed the pivot point with volumes, right? And see the double bottom. Can you see the double bottom? That actually is a very, very important sign out here, right? You can see this is the double bottom. And the candle crossed it with volumes, and after that stock has moved up. So many things you could combine here. Can you see that? Let me just make it a little bigger here. Let me just make it a little bigger. See, this is the double bottom. Double, or rather I would say triple bottom. If you see from here, right? So 1, 2, 3, triple bottom. And it crossed its pivot point with volumes and candle closed above it. Then you can see the uptrend that the stock has had. Let me tell you how much is that uptrend, from where to where. Stock went from where to where. Let me just move something here. So the stock moved from this point, right, which is 268 to 307, right? Good, about 40 points. In Apollo Tyres, 40 points means huge value. I'm not saying that you will do all this trade, but I'm telling you, you can definitely identify the supports, triple bottom, and when this barrier was crossed and pivot point was crossed with volume, you have a good entry. You see this barrier being crossed with volumes, you had a good entry in Apollo Tyres, right? Okay, now see here again, when it went up and up, it experienced resistance. How many times? Once, twice, thrice. Can you see? It experienced resistance 3 times. First, it could not cross the pivot point this day, the next day, then it tried to go up with volume but experienced a resistance. This long tail candle tells you there is a price rejection and the stock massively came down after that. Can you see this? There was a huge downfall, right? So pivot points are important levels. Always try to do them. So even if you're doing intraday trading, let's say, so remember that if there is a weekly, monthly, or daily resistance exists on a stock, then you should be really, really careful, right? So let me see Tech Mahindra, right? This is Tech Mahindra. This is today's candle. It has crossed, it opened above the pivot point but came down with the volume, right? It's not being able to cross the pivot point. Suppose it crosses the pivot point and remain above it, it will be heading up. Always look at it. There's an activity around the pivot point, right? Let me just mark it here. You can see there's a resistance being offered over here. Cluster of candles close to it means there is stock is stuck up between this channel of two levels. When it crosses this channel, it goes up, right? So pivot points are very, very important as far as the trading is concerned, right? Pivot point, look at this beautiful trade. The stock has taken a good support here, right? For how many days? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8th day it went from here to here, right? 8th day it took a good flight from this level to this level, right? From 550 to it went up to 630, means about 80 points it has given you, right? That's the beauty of finding out supports and the resistances of pivot point. So what I'm trying to tell you here is you can take the time frame of 1 day if you're doing positional trade. Like when I give a stock, I always consider its resistances in the form of pivot points, right? So when I was giving this stock, which is Pfizer, I gave it about on this day. So the moment it closed above 2300, which was the previous month's resistance, I have given it, and today it crossed, it demolished its R1 and R2 with voluminous candle, right? So always look for the supports and the resistance, and it's again a double bottom trade. Can you see? This is again a double bottom trade. You can see it over here, right? It's a beautiful double bottom trade. Where was our entry? At this point, the moment this stock goes above this level 2206, we had a good entry. So this voluminous candle, and then after that, see the flight that it has taken today, right? So this was again a double bottom trade, beautiful upward flight. But do you see larger picture? It's taking a good support on the pivot point. Again, it took for 2-3 days, it took good support on the pivot point. Today it's demolished all of them. See here, beautiful support for many days on pivot points, and then it went up, right? So you have to keep on your radar even the resistances. Like look at this point. Stock has experienced resistance at this point by the pivot point, right? So when you're talking about the equity, you have to look for 1 day time frame. Do not look for 15 minutes time frame. And when you're looking for the intraday, particularly, I mean, usually I trade in Nifty, so I look for, the pivot points in 15 minutes. So even if you're wanting to trade in stocks, let's say today my stock that I traded was ICICI Prudential, right? ICICI Prudential was my stock today, which I traded. Look into 15 minutes, how it goes. It opened above the pivot point, fine, and then it came down, took a support, and the moment it went about 443, moment it took a support on the pivot point, it took a good flight. It gave us, from 443, it went up to 455, right? 11-12 points, it just gave in a jiffy, right? So that's the beauty of identifying good, this is how you can use pivot points for intraday trading, right? Look at over here. The stock, this is ICICI Prudential, it opened gap below, but the voluminous candle crossed the pivot point, right? And the second candle onwards, second candle is kind of taking a support. Can you see this long tail candle, right? You can see this long tail candle, this one particularly. The candle left the pivot point with a volume, and then after that, after a bit of resistance on R1, it has just gone up, right? It has just gone up. It has covered the distance 442 to 430, 432, 437, 5 points within no time. And then after that, you can see this, tweezer top happen, and a bearish engulfing candle, and the stock has come down from there. You can use it for intraday trading also, although we are doing positional trade, but I'm telling you how you can utilize your learnings for intraday trading as well. So please note that when we are talking about positional trades, whether it is, you take a trade in options, or you take it in futures, or you take it in cash or equity, it has to be 1 day time frame, right? But when you're doing the intraday trade, your time frame could be 5 minutes or 15 minutes. Your time frame could be 5 minutes or 15 minutes. So hope you're understanding the supports and the resistances. I have seen it happening many times. Most of the stocks do honor the supports and the resistances, right? They do honor supports and the resistances. So see here, this is TCS. It rested here for quite some time, and then it has gone up, right? It has taken up a good flight, right? Now it is experiencing a resistance from R3. R3 on the previous month, right? R3 of the previous month is a big barrier for the stock, right? So you have to definitely take care of intraday, daily charts. Like in the daily charts, you have to look for pivot points, supports, and resistance. This is Vedanta graph. Look at it. Pivot point has offered a resistance. Here again, pivot points have offered a resistance. Similarly, if you see here, pivot points have offered a support here, right? So pivot points has offered a support here. Pivot point have offered a resistance here. So I'm saying it again. See here, beautiful resistance. Can you see this? and the stock has come down. Then a beautiful support and it has gone up. Again resistance, it has come down. So 1 day time frame will tell you exactly what is about to happen in a stock. So many days. It's beautiful, a double bottom as well. It's a beautiful double bottom as well. So see, from here it went down, then went up, then came down, and then went up, right? It's a beautiful double bottom. So pretty much an indication that the market is planning to go up. And then you have 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you see the lower lows? Indication that market is planning to go down. This is Vedanta. So Vedanta is basically bearish in nature now onwards. You can see how it's been just falling down. Okay, so I hope I have made myself clear. If you want to do the positional trades, see beautiful support here. Once, twice, and then look at how many times it has honored the support. Here once, twice, then this is in between, but then 1, 2, then it stopped over here, then again took a support, then again took a resistance from here, took a support, then again took a support, resistance, then a support, then went up, then a support, then went up, like that. So pivot points become very, very important when you want to trade. So if you make up your mind a day before, I'll tell you how do you make up your mind. Please keep your all the major supports and the resistances in front of you. Remember that pivot points have to be crossed with volumes, and if they are not crossed with volumes, they will offer a resistance. Fine. So please remember, the supports will become resistances and resistances will become supports if they have been crossed with volumes. Okay. So these are pivot points. So once again, let me reiterate, if you're doing intraday trades, your time frame has to be 15 minutes, and if you're doing a positional trades, your time frame has to be 1 day, right? And always have all the supports and the resistances in your mind. Look at here, taking a good support and going up, took a resistance from R3 and came down, right? And then let's see back here again, it took a resistance from R3 and came down, right? So here this is taking a support on the pivot point and going up, again consolidating near R1, and then again crossing it with volumes, and then again hovering here for a few days and crossing it again. So the pivot points offer a great opportunity for us to create correct positions. You can see the price rejection at the lower levels. Can you see the price rejection at the lower levels? Look at this long tail, long tail, long tail. What does this indicate? That it is trying to take a support on this pivot point, and then it went up, right? So collectively, R1, R2, R3, S1, S2, S3, and the pivot point are called pivot points collectively, right? So you can see from here, it has taken a support, price rejection at the lower levels, and the stock has gone up. Bearish engulfing, and the stock has come down, right? It has come down massively. So hope you are clear about the support and the resistances offered by the pivot points, right? I would like you to analyze as many stocks and see what's happening. See if you can see some current supports and the resistances. Probably that will give you an idea of how the supports and the resistances are broken, and how the support becomes resistance and resistance becomes support. That also you should be able to analyze. Okay. Look at this 1 day graph of Exide Industries. Yeah, for so long consolidation happened at the R2. Then it took a support today and went up. Such a huge flight, huge volumes, huge flight. All right. So please analyze every stock. Like it's called fine tuning your eyes. You need to know where. If you want to trade tomorrow, you should know where are the supports and the resistances. So I think this is what I wanted to share with you about the pivot points. 1 day for the equity and 15 minutes for intraday. But if you are trading intraday, you should know long-term supports and the resistances as well, long-term pivot points as well, because if they are standing on the head, then in intraday also they will offer you a great resistance. Okay, so with this, I'm signing off. But please analyze every single stock. Nifty also, you should be able to watch clearly and carefully and see where are the supports and the resistances. Let's meet in the next slide. Bye bye.